freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all.
So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in our great country, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that much of the world finds itself in, especially much of the free world, and the factors responsible for it, and what we can do about it. And if you want to join the conversation, the number to call is 718-717-8296. Tonight's program is a live program, so I can take your calls. If you have a question you want to ask, if you have a story you want to share, if you have a bone you want to pick with me for some reason, happy to take your call at 718-717-8296. Well, another anniversary has passed. This past Friday, September 11th, 2015. And wanted to say a few words about it because, of course, I only get a chance to visit with you on Sunday evenings. But even though the day has passed, the memories still should be fresh in our minds. And I hope they remain so. Not because I think we need to use such remembrances for manipulative purposes. I don't think that we need to have these reminders of these catastrophic events and of the threats that constantly are posed by various interests to our freedoms. There are threats to our freedoms from many different sides these days, not the least of which is the character crisis that we ourselves have been in for some years. But freedom is always in jeopardy, and we have to safeguard it, and we have to pay attention to those things that pose a threat to it. And there are some who are of an ideology that inherently has a dislike for freedom for humankind. That ideology sees that we are inherently savages when given freedom. And this ideology says that basically, unless you are rigid adherers to a particular interpretation of a particular philosophy, you will necessarily be in the category of an unscrupulous sort who poses a threat to the common good and therefore is expendable. And we see this happening in many parts of the country, where, in many parts of the world, where various types of cleansing are going on by this radical ideology. And this is the same ideology that attacked the one of the symbols of American freedom in 2001 on September 11th. Now, it's no accident that one of the perhaps not so wonderful examples of our freedom, the kind of unbridled capitalism that we've been warned about time and time again by various religious leaders and by various social commentators as well. It's no accident that a symbol of that kind of unbridled capitalism was the target. That doesn't excuse, however, the act, the terrorist act. And the reason that I introduce this show and I conclude this program with the theme that you hear of the song that my wife and I wrote about this great land of ours is because we have long known, and the founders knew this very well, that there is an inextricable connection between character and freedom. The founders knew and believed sincerely. And we know this because of things that they wrote when going about the business of framing our Constitution. They knew that if people of good moral character, who had their own solid internal moral compass, these people were left alone by government, were not intruded upon to any unnecessary degree, they would prosper, they would innovate, they would create opportunities, not just for themselves, but for others, and that the country would grow and prosper collectively. They knew this. They also knew, without question, that freedom, that unprecedented degree of freedom that they wanted to see exist in this country, would necessitate that the majority of occupants of the country would have to be a pretty rock-solid character. They would have to have that moral compass. Now, I'm not saying for 1 minute that we've always been true to those ideals. Even the founders had their own moral weaknesses, especially when it came to the issue of human slavery and many other things. But the philosophy is still noble. The ideal is still correct. Leave good people alone and they will do great things. The problem is that it's too easy in the absence of a sound internal moral compass and with the blessings of freedom. It's too easy in the midst of great freedom, and especially in the midst of moral relativism and permissiveness and cultural entitlement. It's too easy for people of less than noble character to not only prosper, but multiply in numbers, always to the detriment of our country and always, always posing a threat to our freedoms. So my way of remembering what happened on September 11th is to contemplate this interrelationship between character and freedom, and to be mindful, to be ever mindful of our duty, each and every one of us. And I'm trying to do my part with this program and with my other written and posted works on the internet. We all need to do our part to preserve and defend these precious freedoms we enjoy. And the best way to do that, the very best way to do that, is to restore our moral character, to start caring about one another again, to build strong communities, know your neighbors, be able to trust your neighbors, share values, common values. We won't agree on everything. Nobody agrees on everything. In a free country, everybody's going to have an opinion. And everybody's going to have a slightly different take on things. But surely there are some common core values that we can embrace. And we need to restore that desperately, because we face two great threats to our freedom. One is external. It is this rabid, extreme, freedom-hating ideology that wants to impose an authoritarian type rule on every human being on the planet, and wants to view anyone who doesn't march in lockstep as an unbeliever worthy of death. That's a great threat, folks. Make no mistake. We've been here before. We have been here before. We have seen ideologies that wanted everyone to march in lockstep. Repressive regimes, from Hitler's Nazi Germany to the totalitarian state in the Soviet Union, where if you did the master's bidding, so to speak, you were relatively safe. And if you didn't, you died. Or worse. We've seen this before. We've been there before. We must learn, or we'll perish. So the way I choose to remember 9/11 is to be mindful of all the things that are represented in the tragedy. Freedom is always in peril. It's in peril from without, from those repressive authoritarian regimes that would dominate the world. And make no mistake, I see we got a caller coming in. I'll go ahead and take this call. Hello, and welcome to Character Matters.
Hi, Dr. Simon. Welcome back. I missed your return last week live, but I did catch up with you on YouTube over at UCY.tv. Really enjoy your program. It's awesome. And
Thank
what
you.
you talk about, yes, it's great. I had two things, and I kind of, with the direction you're going now, I thought about asking that. But the first thing, I took a Harris test 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I thought that was interesting. So it says that I had some narcissistic tendencies, but it wasn't in a bad way. Kind of short and sum that up. But I thought it'd be fun to get psychoanalyzed maybe, or my head shrunk. But I also, with 9/11 being, so near to so many people, I also wanted to address that and the propaganda that goes out, whether it be, going back, and I knew you was going to Hitler and Stalin with the direction you was going, and with the Muslims and stuff, those extremists there that, chop your head off if you converted to Christianity or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I think it's very very important also to look at the trend here in America after 9/11, and these boundaries that are supposed to be setting up to protect us, to wall out the world. And when you look at the ideology of America, what America stands for, in your theme song, which I love so much, America is supposed to stand for all that's good and right. And instead of walling it out or walling others out, I think our dedication should be to, spread it, to propagandize this image and stand true to it. And of course, that moral character has to, be first and foremost in those people representing us abroad into the world.
Well, it sounds actually like you have three really good issues here. If you don't mind, let's take each one of them in kind of order, because I think each one of them is very relevant to the program tonight, and I think you've stated them fairly well. Sounds like one of the first things you're bringing up here is that in the spirit of the opening theme song, we have to respect our own ideals, and it sounds what you're beginning to allude to here is that we have to protect our freedom with our own internal policies as well. Is that where you're going with this?
Yeah, I think that would be a good summation.
Yeah, and so when we respond to these extremist kind of ideologies by taking these extraordinary measures that skirt the law, that challenge the constitutional provisions, and that basically threaten our most fundamental freedoms, we fall into the same trap. And I feel that sometimes people use 9/11 and the fact that it's the first time that we've been attacked directly on American soil by foreign entity, they use that as a pretext to do all sorts of things that we have no business doing and that do nothing but jeopardize our freedoms. So if that's what you're alluding to, yeah. I wholeheartedly agree.
I think it's been a loss of freedom and more of a confinement as opposed to, pushing out and spreading the ideology that America used to stand for, for all that's right and good.
And let me also add to that, if you don't mind. I think it's my opinion, we all have one, but I'm going to share my opinion. After all, I have the mic here, don't I? So I'll use it this time. I think that we're strongest when we're at our best. In other words, we don't have to flex military might all the time, and we don't have to use economic strangleholds on other countries or exercise economic prowess. All we have to do, really, is be the best that we can be, the strongest that we can be as a people, as a community. It takes a lot to get here. It takes a lot to infiltrate the culture. It takes a lot to change hearts and minds. And believe me, the seeds that are being planted in certain communities with respect to this ideology, those seeds can only take root with the disenfranchised and the disadvantaged who have been victimized by some of our policies. So when we're healthy and we're whole and we're together, nobody can defeat us. We don't have to worry about that. That's my opinion.
You know, there is, of course, the idea that 9/11 was an inside job, and it's been the force manipulator of society and control.
Well, you know, I think that theory always gets raised when tragedies like 9/11 are used as pretexts for doing other nefarious things. And I think 9/11 is a perfect example of that. I think it was used as a pretext to do some things we had absolutely no business doing. You know, we're paying the price for that many times over. Trillions of dollars. And not just lives lost, but so many lives damaged. And a health system strained beyond its capacity to serve. We have so many families wrecked in an all-volunteer armed forces because of our misguided attempts to right the wrong that was done. So I'm not surprised. I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. I said not to mention the millions and millions of lives affected in other parts of the world as well.
Oh my gosh! All the unnecessary collateral damage, and it serves no proper excuse to say that we take any better care than anybody else to quote unquote minimize collateral damage. You know, an innocent family lost is an innocent family lost, period. So, you know, I can see where these kinds of theories have their roots. And I go back to my point. If we would live up to our own professed ideals, we would not be having these problems. We wouldn't even be having these conversations. And you know, it may seem like a small thing, but I'm one person. And my wife and I, when we got busy on this song, our intent was to reach people's hearts with a message. We figured it was only going to happen one heart at a time. That's what we figured. And it's a humble little attempt, but, you know, I'm sure you have music in your repertoire as you were growing up, perhaps, that struck a certain chord with you, and when you hear it from time to time, it brings back those sentiments. Music has the power to do that. So it's my prayer and sincere hope that anybody listening and really paying attention to the lyrics kind of gets the message about what we're called to be.
Music is a very powerful instrument indeed.
Yeah. To your second point, it seems like the second point you were trying to make, you jestingly said that you thought you might have a little narcissism yourself.
Yes, but I wasn't a bit surprised to read the results. No socio or psychopath, and none of that surfaced or was detected, basically. But at the very end, it said that I think it's more as a disclaimer that to perhaps contact a professional, and I thought, who better but you?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because people ask me about this all the time. As a matter of fact, I was doing a seminar for a group of clergy, and one of the members in the group asked me that very same question, and they wanted to know if it was bad, basically, to have too much self-confidence. And what I had to say to that is that two things. As I make the point in my book, Character Disturbance, and I don't know, have you read any of Character Disturbance?
You know, I have not. I follow you here every week, and I've been over to you have several sites that are just so rich and full of fantastic information.
Do you mean to tell me I've put so much information out there? There's no need for people to get my. We don't want to make that case now, do we? Well, as I mentioned in that book, character disturbance exists along a continuum. And that is, even basically decent, healthy, normal folks can have some traits here or there that are problematic. It takes a lot for someone to be truly character disturbed, and even more for them to be character disordered. And people can have some traits of narcissism without being narcissists. But one point I want to make even more clear than that is that confidence itself, while it accompanies narcissistic features, is not in itself a narcissistic trait. There's nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with confidence.
So you would maybe compare that to, which is so often misquoted, of pride comes before a fall, but it's actually haughty pride. And that, of course, would depend upon your character, which, if you tend to one side or another, then that's where your narcissism or other disordered traits, which I don't consider this narcissism that I supposedly have to be a detriment. Matter of fact, I think it works well in what I do and in communicating with people. I've never met a stranger, so
well,
I'm happy with it.
Yeah, so I'm glad that we've had a chance to address this issue, because I find that a lot of people do confuse that, and actually I was going to be talking about that in particular in this program, because I had a series that I just wrapped up this week on externalizing the blame for things, and narcissistic individuals are notorious for this tactic. And we used to think, the traditional thinking, I'm going to do a little psychology 101 here. The traditional thinking about blaming others was that it was a defense mechanism called projection. Projection is basically when, this is, I'm giving the 5-cent definition of the term. This is when someone has a thought or an impulse or a feeling that in good conscience they can't accept as their own. In other words, maybe they have some hatred or loathing for somebody, but their conscience tells them this is really bad. This is a bad feeling to have. I shouldn't feel this way. You're a real idiot for feeling that way. You should be ashamed of yourself. You should feel guilty. And the person can't take that. So at an unconscious level, to spare themselves the pain of this unholy thought, they project onto someone else the bad feeling or bad intention that they themselves hold. That way, it justifies them having a hostile reaction. Now, this was the old theory, and it was presumed to occur all the time. So when somebody else wouldn't accept responsibility, when somebody wouldn't accept responsibility for their behavior and blamed others, we assumed that they were using the defense mechanism of projection. And we also assumed that by definition, because all defense mechanisms are unconscious, that they were unwitting about this, that they didn't know they were using this defense mechanism, that it was a way to assuage their own conscience, and that they did it automatically and without thinking and unknowingly. Now, today, most people would not hold that view. When I first wrote In Sheep's Clothing, and when the first edition came out in 1996, it was first published actually in 95, but in limited edition. But when the first wide distribution occurred in 96, very few professionals think as they do now. And when I proposed to folks that when people use the what I call manipulation and responsibility avoidance tactic of blaming, that they weren't projecting at all, that it wasn't unconscious, it was deliberate.
Deflecting.
and that they were using it as a tactic to get others to back down and to avoid responsibility themselves. That wasn't a very popular notion when I first published in Sheep's Clothing and when I first started doing workshops. These days, it's a much more accepted notion. So that's what the series has been about this way. Are you, and because it's a particularly common tactic with narcissists, I'll ask you, are you the kind of person that wants to blame everybody else every time something goes wrong?
You know, through my process in life of, I guess, of discovery, in particular about myself, I came to a point where I had to learn self-responsibility and not deflection or projection, but and then after that, of course, then a person has to come to the realization that they have to forgive themselves before, thinking of forgiving others or others forgiving you. So I think I've come into a good place in life through all the hardships to where I am now, to a knowing and a satisfaction of I do now all I can that is right, and it's, I don't know, like over time, if you continue to do bad things, and even if you had a good character to start with, eventually you get so hardened that it's not as hard the next time to do something, and the same goes for when you focus your direction towards what's right and good. The bad things then also become more and more of aliens to oneself.
Right. Well, so far you're not sounding too much like a narcissist. Maybe you think you have some other qualities of a narcissist.
Well, no, I took that test, that HARS test. Another program here in UCY was talking about sociopaths and psychopaths, and they had mentioned that. So I thought I'd take it. I don't know. I think if I could better describe myself, I would say I'm outgoing and personable, and it's not that I want to be the center of attention. Matter of fact, I think what I do here at UCY, it a lot is bringing people together, and that's kind of my theme, is connecting voices. So it's not that I need to be heard, but I think there is a lot that needs to be heard, and certainly I rate your program at the very top, with the fact that without good character, then beyond that, there's no hope. So
yeah.
It means personal responsibility and to being able to make informed decisions, and without knowledge, you can't gain wisdom. So
let me give you my 5-cent definition of the heart of narcissism, and of course, because it's a character dimension, as I mentioned before, it exists along a continuum. But the core of narcissism has to do with pathological self-worth estimation. Narcissists think too much of themselves. It's not that they think inappropriately highly of themselves so much as they see themselves as not only superior to other people, but they see themselves as, because they are superior, entitled to not play by the same rules, not do the same things that common, ordinary folks have to do. So they go ahead.
I think that definition, thank you. I think that definition would have fit me rather well, the younger me, one of the younger me's, I guess. I really do. And in a sense, it was kind of a dark day when it dawned on me that the sun did not rise and revolve around me.
Well, we're gonna do a little test here to test one of my core theories. I'm going to use you as a guinea pig if you will grant me the privilege of doing so.
It will be my honor.
Okay. My theory is, and has been, based on thousands of case studies over the last 33 years. My theory has been, and now, by the way, for the first time ever, there is actually scientific evidence from three excellent studies that lend some support to this theory. Up until a few years ago, there was no research support. But here's the theory. My theory is that people get a big head in their early development because they get reinforced for, and they reinforce themselves for, the things that they can't legitimately take credit for, such as their brains, their talents, their looks. In short, all of the things that they know they have going for them. They make an intuitive assessment, basically, of how they stack up against others. And if they've got a lot going for them and they know it, they can get a pretty big head. Would that have applied to you?
Yeah, at a very young age. I'm going back, 4, 5, 6 years old. That idea was instilled and really, propagated in me as a child. I was, of course, I was my dad's favorite, and
Yeah.
it was like, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly how it's reinforced. So my other theory that goes along with this has been that the core missing variable, then, the key missing variable in the whole equation about creating some kind of healthy balance in character is that the person who's got all these gifts and abilities and whatnot needs to give credit where credit is due. Now, you don't have to be particularly religious to attribute your inheritance to a higher power, whether it be an accident of nature, a pure accident of cosmic dust, or however you want to see it. The fact is that you did not create your brains. You didn't create the good fortune of your environment. You're not responsible for your talents or your abilities. You're only able to legitimately claim credit for what you do with those things, not just for your good, but for the good of everyone. And that is what I consider defines a person's character. And what I have found is that those folks with some narcissistic traits growing up who have turned a corner and become more responsible have finally started to see that. And they have finally gotten kind of the message that it can't be all about them, and they need to afford some credit where credit is due for those things that don't really come from them, and make it a point to claim credit for the things of value that they do with what they've been given. Would that apply to you?
Yes, and that, of course, brings to mind the story of the talents and giving account for what was entrusted to us.
Yeah, exactly. The messages are all there. People have said the same things. It's quite clear that Jesus himself was familiar with Aesop. I had somebody on my blog commented, it was inaccurate, but one of the commentators on my blog was chastising me for something and pointed out that even the title of my first book, In Sheep's Clothing, comes from Jesus. Well, yes, he used that phrase, but the phrase didn't come from him originally. It came from Aesop. And in that Hellenistic culture of his time, people were familiar with those fables and the quote-unquote morals in them. So, yes, he used the analogy, but guess what? It had been around for a long time. So people have said this, the wisdom of the ages has been there forever. We just have to kind of pay attention to it. Sometimes I think we're slow learners.
I know I am. My name's Vince, but sometimes I spell it as Dents.
I've forgotten what the third point was that you, I believe, raised. Can you think of it right offhand?
Well, maybe I would surmise it to say that, of course, going back to giving a person a fish or teaching them how to fish, I would say our forward policy should be that we show up with fish and fishing rods and teach them to fish and not beat them with the rod.
Oh, well, gosh, there's a whole program right there. And if you'll be kind enough to either email me through the blog, there's that contact Dr. Simon feature on the blog. If you make any comments there and hit that button, it goes right to my email box. And I get so many a week that sometimes I get 2 and 3 weeks behind. I'm going to admit that to you in advance. And I have to kind of triage the inbox. So I might not respond right away, but if you don't mind, I like to bring up this very topic and related topics whenever we do a program that falls close to one of the patriotic holidays. And the next one coming up will be Veterans Day. And it sounds like a perfect time to address that very issue.
Awesome.
So if you'll remind me, if I don't myself remember it, I'd appreciate it.
I certainly will.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Dr. Simon, I was going to say, as always, it's been a great pleasure to talk to you. I really enjoy your work, and I think it's very applicable to all of us to look at.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I must say I'm a little bit relieved. I had someone on the blog who just kind of tore me a new one, and I haven't yet responded because I've been obsessing a little bit about how appropriately I need to respond to this. And I was kind of saying a little prayer to myself before you came on. Gosh, I hope I'm not about ready to get this tremendous verbal tongue lashing. So it's been a pleasure.
Yes, I would say that my advice then to you, if I may, would be as important as it is what you're going to say. It's I would say equally or more so important to know when not to say it. Yeah. I agree with you, and that's why I'm very cautious about these things. I am blessed in two ways, especially with my blog. Generally speaking, there have been, I can count them now, there have been 4 occasions in which I have had to intervene in my blog and do some cleanup of some big messes. That's 4 times in 10 years. That ain't bad. That ain't bad. That's the words of
that ain't bad at all. If you go Googling for various topics, you're likely to get routed to the blog at manipulative-people.com. And my commentators, by and large, share a wealth of wonderful information. And they support one another. So these odd things that happen from time to time are a rarity. And I'm blessed there because I have visited other blogs, and I occasionally submit pieces to other blogs. And I can tell you that there are many blogs out there that are nowhere near as fortunate as mine. So I feel very blessed about that. And I appreciate the support of those who not only go to the blog to read the material, but also contribute to it. So I hope if you're one of those contributors that you'll accept my sincere thanks.
Well, thank you again. And on what I call my voyage of discovery, I'm very happy to make port with you every week here at UCY.TV.
Well, thank you so much. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, what a great call that was. I appreciate it very much. And, it really speaks to the other point that I was wanting to make very much. And it speaks to the series that I've been writing about. I said earlier that the old notion about blaming everybody else for problems, the old notion was that a person is unconsciously projecting feelings and attitudes and beliefs and sentiments that they themselves would find abhorrent to acknowledge in themselves. And therefore they ascribe them to other people as a way of justifying perhaps ill feelings toward other people. But I think the evidence is mounting that blamers are actively and consciously manipulating most of the time. Narcissistic individuals are those individuals who can never be wrong, you know? And the old thinking on that, by the way, too, was that the reason they could never be wrong, this was the old thinking. And by the way, the old thinking is not dead by any means. There are still plenty of mental health professionals and laypersons alike who hold this belief. The thinking was that when somebody acts like they can never be wrong and has never made a mistake and it's always somebody else's fault, that they do that as a kind of a compensation for insecurity and for feelings of inferiority and for feelings of ineptitude, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, guess what? Now, for the first time in the last 5 or 6 years, evidence has been mounting, once again, that an assertion I made long ago, back in the 90s, and put in sheep's clothing and also in Character Disturbance, and have written many articles on the blog at manipulative-people.com and also counselingresource.com, counseling with 2 L's, by the way. Evidence is mounting that there are really 2 different kinds of narcissists. One, the researchers these days is one group they're calling the quote-unquote vulnerable type. These are the folks who, in classical opinion, are presenting a facade, an unconsciously constructed facade of greatness and superiority and confidence, et cetera, when inwardly they feel no such thing. And so they are basically compensating for their own lack of genuine self-worth. And there are such folks, but I can tell you in this day and age, they are rare. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It would take too long to explain it. But because of the socio-cultural climate we find ourselves in, that type of narcissist, while that type exists, that type is very rare in our culture, in modern culture. More common, it appears, is what the researchers are now calling the grandiose type narcissist. These are the people who don't just believe they are great. They know they are. And it's not an act. It's not a facade. And it's not unconsciously constructed. They truly believe in their own greatness. And they have no hesitation about acknowledging themselves as superior. And it can get very pathological. Where it gets truly pathological is where their empathy is so impaired or so absent that they feel entitled to use and abuse others. That's where it gets what we call really malignant. When attitudes of superiority are coupled with a marked deficit in the capacity for human empathy. In some cases, the capacity is absent altogether. This is the case in psychopathy. When you add those 2 qualities together, the impaired empathy and the sense of superiority, it fosters in the individual a sense of entitlement to prey, to P-R-E-Y, on their own kind. Why? Because they see those individuals among their own kind who have scruples, who have anxieties, who have hesitations, who have empathy, they see those folks as inferior, as inherently, naturally inferior. And that's what gives them license to prey. Prey. So they heartlessly use and abuse others. It's all about them. They don't really care about anyone else. That's when it gets really, really malignant. Now, in its infinite wisdom, the official diagnostic manual of the American Psychiatric Association has recently relegated the disorder we once called narcissistic personality disorder to unofficial status, because narcissism is such a dimension of many other personality disturbances. So they were getting on to an idea, the idea that I proposed in my book, Character Disturbance. And by the way, for the caller, if you're still listening out there, I know there's a wealth of information on the internet and on my blog particularly, but I urge you, and I urge all the listeners, Character Disturbance is a book that will give you a framework for understanding it all. It will give you a framework for understanding the phenomena of our time. Why we find ourselves in the messes we're in. Why our relationships don't work. Why your boss is so difficult to work with. Why your coworkers cause so many problems. Why your life partner turns out to be somebody you never thought they were when you first hooked up with them. Why communities are falling apart, why marriages don't last. It gives you a framework for understanding this phenomena we call character disturbance. And it explains the spectrum of character disturbance in all of its different manifestations and the difference between some minor disturbances of character and a full-blown disorder of character. It even explains the differences between what we call personality and character. A lot of people use those terms synonymously, and they do so erroneously. They're not the same thing. So, for the benefit of the caller there, and for those of you in the audience who may be fans of the blog, maybe have written some comments, and maybe have read several of the articles, there really is no substitute for the books because of the framework that they set. And it will help all the other articles take on new context and new meaning for you as amplification of the themes in those books. So I recommend that even if you're fans of manipulative-people.com, which I urge you to go to for the information that's there. And by the way, if you're a commentator and a subscriber, thank you so much. You make the blog what it is. I can't tell you how grateful I am to you. And you might also want to go to the Counseling with 2 L's resource.com blog, where I contribute an article a week. But above and beyond all that, I would urge you to consider In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People. This book has been translated into many languages. It's published now even in the former Soviet Union. In Russia, it's doing rather well, so I guess they're having similar problems over there. And also my book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, which is the more in-depth study of all character disturbance, not focused primarily on manipulators. And also my book for the Christian faith community, the Judas syndrome, about how we betray our lack of faith, not only in the messenger, but in the message he came to give us, in the actions that we take, in the things that we do. It's one thing to profess on our lips certain ideals, just as certain Americans do with the ideals of this country. It's one thing to profess that, and it's another thing to live them out. And if there's anything the cognitive behavioral revolution in psychology has taught us, is that how we behave is really, in large measure, determined by how we really think, what our real core beliefs and attitudes are. Not what we say they are, but what values we truly hold. That's the best predictor of what we'll do. So it's not a matter of what we say. It's not a matter of testimony. What we testify to is in our actions. And for those of us who profess, at least, to follow the Christian path, it's all about the command that we have to love in a particular manner. To love that unseen and unknowable creative force that is responsible for everything, and who, by the way, we are incapable of defining, and whom we're actually cautioned against so doing. To love that with everything we got, to love that person, that spirit, with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength. And to love our neighbor as ourselves. And as the caller mentioned earlier, if we were tending to ourselves well, our own neighbors here, and our other neighbors, if we were planting the appropriate seeds and doing so reliably, nobody could touch us. Our strength ultimately has always been not in our military might and not in our economic power, although Lord knows we have both. That's never been and never will be the source of any greatness for America. As the song that you're about to hear tries to testify to and tries to instill in those hearts and minds that are open to the message, the character of America, the greatness of America, has always been in the character of its people, who not just profess, but live out the true meaning of its highest ideals. Those folks who embrace those ideals, those core values, those noble values, and live them out in their daily lives, in their business affairs, in their interpersonal affairs, in their family affairs. That's what makes America great. And when we reclaim those values and when we live them out, we will be great once more and we will be invincible. Until that time, I urge you to stay tuned and tune in again next week for another edition of Character Matters. I'm Dr. George Simon. Have a good week.